Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. This is going to be a fabulous podcast. If you are new to my podcast, they are always filled with tips, information. Often I interview people to learn about things too, because as a teacher, if we understand children's diagnosis, we can support them better. And over the last few years, I've been hearing terms like PDA, AuDHD, RSD, and Laura Kerby is the world expert on this. And this is why I got Laura onto my podcast. And the way I got Laura was because Eliza Fricker, who has PDA and a daughter with PDA, wrote a book that was a Sunday Times bestseller in the UK. So I invited her onto the podcast. She shared amazing information and insights for parents. And I was like, well, how can teachers access this? And she's like, oh, you need to get Laura on your podcast. I illustrated all her books. So I thought I would do a little bit, I've not tried this before, where I do excerpts from different podcasts, ones that I've done with Laura and with Eliza. One of the podcasts is on understanding PDA, which was episode 307. The other one was helping PDA teens thrive with Eliza and Laura. And then Laura did a podcast with me on AuDHD. Now, if you don't know about these, do not worry. That is what you're going to hear in these podcast excerpts. We're going to explain what's the difference between ODD and PDA. Now, that's at the end, so stay tuned to the end. What is AuDHD? What is RSD, Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria? So you're going to hear a whole lot of interesting things throughout the podcast. Now, if you enjoyed this podcast or part of my community and you're wanting to learn more with Laura, for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I'm doing 50% off both her courses, which means I only be $74.50 Australian so it's a 50% discount. They're normally $149. And even better, we're going to give you a bonus 6 months to complete the courses because I know how busy the end of the year is. But if you know you're getting a child with PDA or AuDHD at the start of next year, why not do the course over summer to prepare yourself for this? So Laura gives, as you'll hear in this podcast, the most amazing analogies, and she explains things so well. So let's face it, in this day and age, you could go and look on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you use to get some tips and information, but hearing it from a teacher and a parent, hearing it from someone that understands the complexity of neurodiverse children, I think these courses are 2-hour game changers and honestly save you going down a rabbit hole looking at a whole lot of stuff that isn't like practical things to do in your classroom. I get I'm completely biased, but I am a huge fan of Laura because I learned so much. Recording both of those courses, I learned so much. And I sat there thinking of previous students, as you'll hear in these podcasts, going, I wish I'd known this. So if you want to understand these group of students about how to engage them, why they often behave the way they behave, I highly recommend look at those 2 courses. Why not enroll in both? And you can do them over the next 6 months and tick your PD's booked in plan for next year. So I'm going to start off explaining. The first part is really Laura explaining why she wrote the PDA course. Enjoy. Wonderful. So tell us, why did you write this book?
There's a few reasons, really. I think probably the main reason and the most important reason for me was that, unfortunately, I think PDA's got a really bad reputation. There's a lot of real negatives associated with PDA. People often assume that a young person with PDA is going to be incredibly challenging to work with, even violent. And in the UK, when I'm speaking to families, I hear on a really regular basis that their child has been diagnosed with PDA and then they found a school that they think could really work for their child. And then when they've approached that school, the schools say, oh, sorry, we don't take children with PDA, or we don't work with children with PDA, which is just awful. That's even happening.
I can't believe. So schools they can just say we can't accommodate a child.
Yeah, they can say we can't meet children. Sometimes they'll just say, oh, we don't feel that we can meet your child's needs. But sometimes parents have been told we don't take children with PDA. And for me, that is just that's just wrong. I wanted to change that. And I think the book actually starts with a confession that PDA used to scare me. Like when I first started working, I was initially an assistant head teacher in a specialist school for children who were autistic. And that was the first time that I had really come across this profile. And it used to terrify me. And the confession in the book is very honest that I was being hurt. My staff were being hurt. The days were sometimes dictated by some of these learners. And then I just had this absolute revelation that there was nothing wrong with these children. It was the environment and it was me. It was everything that I was doing was wrong. So that was creating this huge kind of challenge. And then there's a second confession in the book, which is actually when you work in education, you're not meant to have favorites, but I do. And they all have PDA because my mindset has shifted so much away from thinking that these learners are difficult and challenging and hard work and oppositional. Then they are honestly, when you get it right, they are the most amazing young people to work with. They're so creative and imaginative and funny. And so I think that was the main reason for writing the book, that I wanted to share all the positives about PDA, some of the mistakes I made as well, so that educators reading it, not just educators, anybody reading it, thinks, actually, these are amazing young people and we want to work with them.
Yeah, I wanted to interrupt you 100 times during you explaining that because, first of all, I think that confession is so important because there'll be teachers listening today who are also scared and worried. And that comes from lack of information. And that's really why I do my podcasts and I write my blogs and why I say, get books like your book. And I saw on Facebook, and I thought this was amazing, that a teacher said that this book was recommended to me by a parent. I truly loved it and it helped me understand PDA. It helped my interactions with her child and my understanding. The truth is, every teacher wants to. Me too. I was getting teary when you were. Every teacher wants to help a child, and knowing the parent found the book and gave it to the teacher. And I often say that, like I had an email today from a teacher saying, we haven't got a budget to buy that behaviour solutions book. And I go, it's a $30 book. How can schools not support teachers and people haven't got the money, but we should be providing the books because then people can go back to it. And what I find, the book gives confidence. And what I'm hearing for you, which is why I started in autism too, I was struggling. I didn't know what I was doing. And when you get the right strategies, you get the confidence. And our children know that. These children know that how you're feeling.
So exactly. And especially children with PDA.
100%.
Children with PDA are so hypersensitive to your emotions. So if you're walking into a learning environment as a teacher or learning support assistant, and you are feeling a bit anxious and stressed, they will 100% pick up on that. But because they're autistic, they may not be able to think, oh, they might be feeling anxious and stressed because something's happened in the staff room or they're tired or whatever. They'll think, what have I done wrong?
Correct.
And then that instantly will increase their anxiety.
100%. I think I get two reactions from my PDA students. One is, what have I done wrong? And the other is, that teacher hates me. I hope you enjoyed listening to Laura. I'm going to come back to a minute, those two reactions that I get from my student. That's the one, what have I done wrong? And the other one, the teacher hates me. Because since recording that podcast, Laura came on and explained rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which I have become obsessed with understanding. So not this next little excerpt, the one after, she's going to do a deep dive into that. So stay tuned if you want to know more about that. But I thought before we do a dive into that, it's actually really helpful to understand AuDHD students, so the autism and ADHD students. And I think having this little bit of information before we do a deep dive into rejection sensitivity, because it's 95% of children with ADHD have this rejection sensitivity. I wish I had known that 30 years ago because this just explains so much to me. But in the meantime, understanding students, which I think half of my students, as you'll hear me say in a moment, probably have that AuDHD. Sorry, I always say it different. Is it AuDHD or AuDHD? Anyway, whichever way. But if you get my e-zine, or follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I did share a fabulous poster and 2 posters, one on AuDHD and one on RSD, episode 317. If you go back to that episode, you will still be able to get that. And I'll probably put it on this episode as well. But honestly, the visuals that explain the overlap and what rejection sensitivity looks like, I think you are going to love it. So make sure you check that out as well.
It's estimated that 2/3 of those with ADHD have at least one other coexisting diagnosis. It might not even be diagnosed with conditions such as autism. And I was saying, Sue, that the school that I worked in, the students all had a primary diagnosis of autism, but at least half also had an ADHD diagnosis.
I couldn't agree more. When I was prepping for this today and thinking about it, I was thinking every second one of my students when I was in an autism school definitely had that autism ADHD. Now, anyone who's going, why haven't I heard of this before? Because it wasn't until we did the new DSM that you could have both. Before that, you can only have one diagnosis.
It's crazy, doesn't it? That you couldn't actually have both. No, it's crazy.
I get that. We've come so far. And I meet parents of children with Down syndrome that they wouldn't give Down syndrome and autism to, too. So it's not just ADHD, it's all comorbidity. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seems ridiculous. And I think that's probably what. So I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed 5 years ago now. But I also recognize that I'm autistic as well. I'm not even saying I have autistic characteristics. If you have autistic characteristics, you're autistic. I saw a brilliant thing the other day. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. So you can't be a little bit autistic. You're either autistic or you're not. And I don't think it was until I really understood my ADHD and then that the layers of masking took that off, the layers of not feeling that I could be authentic in certain situations, that I thought, God, yeah, like I am autistic as well. But there's so much crossover. It can be really complicated. I think that's why I just prefer to say to people now, I'm neurodivergent. I don't actually feel like I should have to break it down and say what my diagnosis is and how I self-identify as well.
No, and if anyone who's come to my course in the last couple of years will know, that is why I say I prefer the term neurodiversity or neurodivergent, depending what people prefer, because it encapsulates that complexity. I rarely have a student with one diagnosis. And I love what Tony Attwood says. Without a diagnosis, students are judged. With a diagnosis, they can be supported. So as you've talked about in the AuDHD course, well, it tells us what supports a child needs. So, for example, I had a student if I've got a child with autism, they just want to know we've got maths today. Yeah. Yep. They want to know we've got maths, but they've got AuDHD. They probably want to know we've got maths and what we're doing, the detail. The child with autism probably wants to know the detail. And some of my children with autism like to do the same activities. Whereas if I had a child with AuDHD, they probably want a bit more variety within that.
Yeah.
And I heard this great, and I don't know if it makes sense, but it's basically with AuDHD, it's like having two different voices talking to you, going like a routine and one going, I want variety. And I think we see this in our students. And as you mentioned in the course, though, it can look different on different days. So sometimes students might be super rigid and be like that autism, more focused, more rigid. And some days they might be more flexible. Depends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are, again, I said this in the course as well. There'll be days when I will wake up and I'll think, oh, thank goodness, I've got nothing planned today. I've got nothing in my calendar. I can just have a really spontaneous, just see where the day takes me day. And then there'll be other days when I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh no, I don't have anything in my diary. What am I going to do today? Because there would be different days when my brain needs different things. And there'll be some days when my brain really needs some structure and some direction of what I'm going to do. And then there'll be days when I don't like the fact that I've got structure and I almost push back against that. So I think, like you said, Sue, that's why it's so important that we treat every single student as an individual and that we treat them as an individual every single day as well, because they could present differently on different days.
Yes, but what I like about a concept of the ADHD student being different to autism or ADHD, those contradictions. Because I hope you're not getting overwhelmed by all these terms. But remember, you can do Laura's course where this is really what is it? And in the course, Laura explains what to do. In the ADHD course, the two things I absolutely loved was the rejection sensitivity that she's going to talk about in a moment. But also she talked about the boiling kettle analogy, which I'm going to start using myself. I absolutely love it. But I'm going to hand over to Laura now to discuss rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Anyone listening needs to know about rejection sensitivity because, Laura, I did not know it had a name until you did a post on this. Was it 2 or 3 years ago on your Facebook page? And when I read it, I was like, oh, this explains my group of students. I've been sharing with everyone about it ever since I read that post. So people who don't know, can you just explain what it is?
Yes. So rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD, is thought to affect, and I've read statistics, 99 or 98% of people with ADHD, but also, so it's going to affect anyone with AuDHD, but it also really affects a lot of autistic people as well. So anyone that's neurodivergent is likely to experience it. And it's basically, I guess the easiest way to describe it is it's a hypersensitivity to any kind of negative or perceived negative feedback or response. And it means that your brain is constantly tricking you or lying to you. You think that you're always in trouble. So, for example, you always think the worst of yourself and what other people are thinking about you. So I spoke about this on the course, but when I did a qualification in the UK to become a head teacher. And first of all, I spent my whole time on this course, which was, I think it was 2 years. I've spent the whole time thinking, I shouldn't be on the course. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as good as the other people on the course. They're better than me. I don't belong here. So that was awful because it made me feel really sort of anxious the whole time. I was also given feedback from my mentor when I did this course. He said, Laura, you've got 60 children in your school. He said, you could do a parents' evening. 59 parents could say, Laura, this is a brilliant school. You're doing a fantastic job as a head teacher. Well done. Keep it up. One parent could say, Laura, we're not particularly happy. Things aren't great. He said, you will go home and you will obsess on that one parent that's not happy. And he was totally right. That's exactly what I used to do. When I first started doing a lot of training in schools and colleges, I used to do feedback forms. And I could get 50 feedback forms and I could get like 49 that said training was excellent, superb, amazing, learnt loads. One person could say it was average. And I'd cry. I'd literally be like, I'm a terrible trainer. I shouldn't be doing this as a job. I should just give up. It means that if I text a friend and they don't text me back straight away, instantly my brain will say, that's it, they hate you now, or you've done something to upset them, or you said something 5 years ago about them that they found out about. It's just horrible. It's walking into a room full of people and thinking that they don't like you, and then walking out of that room of people and thinking they're all talking about you now in a really negative way. And there's no evidence to back it up. But what it also meant when I was younger, particularly, was that, and I still have a lot of social anxiety now. People don't always think that about me because people think, oh, she's really confident because she does loads of public speaking and I can stand up in front of a room full of people and talk. But I'm probably slightly masking and performing. But what it meant, particularly when I was younger, when I was at school, was that I would mask. I was like a bit like a social butterfly. So I'd be like with one group of girls at school and I'd be like, they'd be talking about a band they liked. And I'd go, yeah, I really like them too. I really like them too. And then I'd be with a different group of girls in the afternoon and they go, oh, that band's terrible. They're shit. And I'd be like, yeah, they're really shit. But then eventually people would find out, oh, Laura said the other day that they were rubbish, or Laura said the other day that they were really good. And then I'd get sort of found out. So then I was kind of masking and trying desperately to fit in. But in my attempts to fit in, I would also make sort of like social faux pas as well, which then would come back to get me, which just reinforced the fact that I wasn't very good socially. And then when I got older, I wanted to sort of go out and socialize, but I'd get very anxious about going out and socializing. So I would either drink a little bit too much alcohol to try and relax myself, and then probably behave in a way that was a bit like OTT. Or what I would do is I would come home from any social situation and analyze it to death, ruminate on every single conversation I'd said, think, oh, that they think you're an idiot, they think you're this. It was awful. So I'd just be so anxious all the time. And then, of course, the next time I'd be going out, I'd be like, oh, the last time I went out, I felt terrible. So I would it would always become worse the more I went out. But it's impacted every aspect of my life. It's impacted my friendships, relationships, career, everything.
But what I love about you sharing that is thinking of students who would hyperfixate, like, that hates me, that student's looking at me, that teacher doesn't like me, that teacher, like, I can think of children who, I had a student last year when I was doing an observation who was hiding behind the bookshelf saying, everyone's looking at me. And no one was looking, but it was a perception. It was in their mind, it was so real, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
And the heightened, like, everyone hates me, they were trying to hide, and then they're all looking at me. And I like, no one's looking, they're all doing it. No, they were, like, actually not being able to let that go. And it wasn't until you explained to me that rejection sensitivity. And in your book, you've got so many great strategies to help women who, I am sure there's a lot of women listening who have experienced this. I was in a school a couple of weeks ago where there was a teacher who has ADHD, and definitely feeling this from other staff members. And it's probably absolutely that imposter, they're a young teacher, rejection sensitivity. And so what I love is when you can label it, it's a bit like with emotions. Once you can label it, you can actually regulate it. So when people can know, oh, that's just my rejection sensitivity, then they can work through those strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in a situation on Saturday when I was talking to two people that I'd not met before, and one of them was quite a young girl, 19-year-old with ADHD, and I was talking to her about it. And I said to her, before I understood RSD, I would walk away from this interaction and I would like almost visualize you two like looking at each other and laughing, like, what's she talking about? And I said, but I know that you're not going to do that now. I said, because I know that it's my brain tricking me. So one of the strategies I talk about in the book, and this is a brilliant strategy that I've used when I've worked with young people as well, is take the thought to court. Like, where is the evidence? Where is the evidence that people are laughing at me when I walk out the room? Where is the evidence that people are talking about me negatively? And also, just like you say, giving it a name has been really, really helpful. But also, I do talk about in the book, like, yes, occasionally people are going to talk about me negatively. I'm not going to impress everybody. Not everyone is going to like me. And actually, that's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I think this is something that we really see with our ADHD, AuDHD learners. And I talk in the course about my son who's diagnosed with ADHD. He was so desperate to be liked and get the approval of his peers when he was at school that he took on the persona of the class clown. And that was his, and we've spoken about it, and he's 22 now, and he's like, Mum, I used to do this, I used to do that, like all the stuff he's told me he got up to at school, which he never got, the stuff he didn't get caught for, which I never found out about, he's now telling me about. And he was like, Mum, I was just peer pressured so easily because I wanted the other young kids to like me.
Absolutely, Laura. I think understanding that the AuDHD child because of that rejection sensitivity, their peers wanting them to do something is far bigger than the principal telling them off for it.
Yeah.
That is the bigger voice in their head. I hope you've really enjoyed hearing all of these things from Laura. This next little excerpt is Eliza Fricker, Laura, and myself talking about their book on teens. Now, Eliza Fricker is an illustrator, and at school, she was a student who would doodle all the time in her books, and she's made that into a career. They've actually got a couple of new books coming out that I can't wait to get my hands on. They haven't landed in Australia yet, but if you're listening throughout the world, they might have landed where you are. Just books take like 3 months to get to Australia now. Pre-COVID, they used to send them on an aeroplane. Now we have to wait for the boat. So anyway, highly check out my website for their books. They're just fantastic. I really do recommend Eliza and Laura's books for any of you who want more understanding of PDA. The illustrations are just gorgeous. So in this little excerpt, I'm actually asking which is their favorite illustration, but I think you will find it really insightful and helpful to understanding and hearing from both of them.
One of Eliza's favourite illustrations is in chapter, isn't it? Chapter 1, what is PDA anyway? And there's a brilliant picture of a child in a library, and the adult with her is saying, "Oh, you love this series, don't you?" And the child's then thinking, "No, not anymore." And that is one of the things we have to be so careful with PDA is not to get too enthusiastic. And it's a difficult balance, I know, because if you have a child, whether it's as a parent or as a professional, that hasn't been able to do much because of their demand avoidance, and then all of a sudden they want to do something, the temptation is to really jump on that and just show loads of enthusiasm. But that in itself then creates a demand. And that illustration, it's genius. It's just so, when we put that on Facebook, so many parents were just like, yeah, I just so relate to this. Yeah, all the illustrations are amazing.
I think that was my favorite too. So it's funny you say that.
Oh, is it?
It was, yeah. And I don't know if it was like, I don't know, just something I went, oh yeah. And I've made that mistake. Like when we all have, we've had it. Oh, I've done that. Just pointing that out. Oh, you remember you loved that video. Well, not anymore. Like, and
Exactly.
you can see that, right? It just, I love Nemo, but not anymore. I had a beautiful little boy who, definitely looking back, PDA Profile, and he was really into sharks and dolphins. So I spent all holidays like getting all the stickers, and I turn up the first day with all the sharks and dolphins, and I just saw his own disappointment that I had put that effort in to get all those stickers. Now he felt this huge demand, which I didn't understand at the time. This is 10 years ago before we even talked about it. But these are the students that I keep reflecting on now and going, that makes sense. And then he wasn't even another sea creature that he became interested in. It was just completely, no more sea creatures for me.
Yeah. It's just like a switch almost, isn't it? It's like, it's too much pressure. It's too much demand. I know what you're trying to get me to do. So that I just can't do it.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't listened to our last couple of podcasts, they're probably going, well, what do you do? What's wrong with that? What does someone do if a child loves something? How do you make it not a demand then?
I think it's just showing a genuine interest in something without any hidden agenda. I know as a neurodivergent person, there is nothing better than when someone shows a genuine interest in your special interest. And there's no agenda attached to it. There's no, oh, now that I know that Laura loves Titanic, I'm going to get her to learn all these facts and figures about Titanic, because that's pointless. Like that there's no point to that. But just sit and talk to me about the Titanic. Tell me some facts I didn't know. And then that's like a genuine reason for me to be interested in, and also a genuine reason for me to want to sit and be with you and learn from you. So it is a hard balance to get.
I think it is. I hope that was all very interesting for you. And this little excerpt's just a little bit more about PDA and actually why I call it pathological demand autonomy rather than pathological demand avoidance. Because after learning from Laura in the course, I have found it easier to explain to teachers this student wants autonomy, so they want to help you. In fact, as Laura says in the course, treat them as an assistant rather than a student. And if you think of them like that, you will have a great time. Anyway, I will hand over to Laura to explain more.
The book when I'm training, and I actually got asked about this exactly a week ago. I was doing some training and I was explaining that somebody who is PDA is still autistic. Okay. There does need to be some kind of structure in terms of some predictability about what's going to happen, because if there isn't, that in itself can cause anxiety. But within that structure, there needs to be a lot of autonomy. And that word autonomy is so important for people with PDA. So the analogy I came up with in the training, and it just came to me, was when I go on holiday, I need to know where I'm going, where I'm staying, the dates, the flights, how long I'm there for. Those things are all really important. So that's my structure and my routine. But when I'm on holiday, I like to have a lot of autonomy. And what I wrote about is, can you imagine going on holiday and someone banging on your door every morning saying, you're getting up at 6 this morning, you're going to this beach, you need to wear this bikini, you need to go to this restaurant at lunchtime and you need to eat this food. And then this evening you need to go to this restaurant and you need to be in bed by this time.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't be your holiday, really.
It is such a good analogy. I love it.
So within the learning environment for someone with PDA, you still need to offer them, there does seem to still be some structure and routine. And also within a school environment, a child can't say, I'm going to take my lunch now at 9 o'clock in the morning. But within that, you can still offer them a lot of autonomy. Would you like to?
And I have saved the best to last. This is my absolute favorite excerpt. It is where Laura explains the difference between PDA and ODD, so pathological demand avoidance and oppositional defiant disorder. Great. I love this explanation, but can I just say a little thing that I have found over the years that similar strategies work for ODD and PDA children, but I think it's worth understanding they are different. So PDA, you need to have a diagnosis of autism and it's a profile. It's not a diagnosis as such to get PDA. It's funny, I was been in a preschool this term and there's a little 4-year-old girl that first day I met her, I'm like, she's autism and PDA. Like she was on a waiting list that came in, the diagnosis was PDA and autism, and the staff were like, how did you know that? But as soon as I met her, having everything I learned from Laura on the course, I knew within 5 minutes that that's what she was. Now, I don't diagnose children. Just remember, I'm a teacher, not a psychologist. But as soon as I recognized that, I was able to give the staff some great strategies, and they cannot believe the difference in her. But also they're not so exhausted, which is a little bit what Laura talked about at the beginning. They've got better strategies and not having these big meltdowns with her because they understand her need for autonomy. Oppositional defiant disorder is different, as Laura will explain. But as I say, I have found those students with ODD similarly need autonomy, make decisions, and understanding that those strategies can work for both sets of children for me has been really helpful. So can you explain the difference between PDA and ODD for people?
Yes. So ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, is not an autism spectrum condition. That is one of the biggest differences. So a young person is unlikely to have the same kinds of social communication differences. They may not have any sensory needs. One of the biggest differences and the most important differences is that recognition of hierarchy and authorities. As I mentioned earlier, a child with PDA doesn't really see authority, whereas a child with ODD absolutely does. And in my experience, a child with ODD will refuse to do something that they are told by somebody that they perceive to be in a position of authority, like a teacher or an adult, like a parent, whereas in a peer group, they might not have any kind of need for control at all. The need for control it's the need for control and autonomy that is so important to someone with PDA. That's not what it is with an ODD. That need for control with an ODD is more, you're not the boss of me just because you're an adult kind of thing. So again, I've got an analogy to help explain this, which I usually might say. Another analogy. I'm sure some of your Australian listeners will understand this more than my UK listeners. So we don't have too many poisonous spiders in the UK. We think we've got one. But I don't like spiders at all. So if someone came up to me and said, "Hi, Laura, I've come to your training session today, but I brought my pet spider. His name is Sid. He's not poisonous, but I just need you to hold him for me while I'm doing the training. Is that okay?" Obviously, that's not going to happen. There is no way that I could do that. Okay. Even though I want to keep the person that's come to my training happy and I want them to have a good training experience, I can't do it. There is nothing that can make me sit there and hold a spider like that. I can't do it. So that's PDA. It's can't, due to anxiety and fear, even though it might appear irrational because the spider's not dangerous. If someone came up to me and said, "Hi, Laura, I brought a spider to your training session. Would you mind just holding it for me while I'm doing your training?" And I say, "No, hold your own spider. Why should I do it?" And I've no fear of spiders at all. I'm just thinking, no, I'm not doing it. You hold your own spider. That's more ODD. That's I won't do it. Another really important distinction is that for me, my PDAs often want to do the things that they've been asked to do and they can't. And there's a brilliant video by the PDA Society, which was released about 4 years ago. It's got lots of different quotes from people talking about their PDA. And there's a quote in there from a little girl, and she says, "When you ask me to do something, I will think up lots of different excuses because I don't want you to be disappointed in me." And that is so important to understand, that often PDAs desperately want to do the things that they want to do, but they can't. That's not ODD. ODD, they don't care if you're upset that you don't do what they've been asked to do. Sorry, they don't do what you've asked them to do. They don't care.
Well, I hope you agree. I saved the best to last, understanding that ODD versus PDA. But gosh, I really hope you feel like you understand rejection sensitivity or the ADHD, that maybe you're thinking of students. And I'm hoping you're like, oh, I'm inspired to learn more about this, because that is what Laura did for me. Following her on Facebook and Eliza, I was so inspired to learn more. And the more I've learned, the more I've understood this group of students, the better I've been at going into schools and helping teachers and teacher assistants and educators in early childhood. I'm getting children as young as 4 with that PDA profile. And I think the 2-hour investment to do the PDA course is invaluable, and the AuDHD course too. Like those 2 courses, you've got 6 months to do them, 50% off. So basically 2 courses for $149. What great professional development. But as I always say, you're not just going to use this year and next year. You're going to use this information for the next 20 years. For as long as you teach, you're going to have these skills and knowledge. So make sure you check out the Black Friday, Cyber Monday special that's on, and please, please, please let anyone know. And if you're handing on a student next year, or you're a parent of a PDA or ADHD, and you are worried if the next staff member is going to understand this student, why not let them know the sale's on, or go to your leadership team and go, look, why don't we buy this course, and whoever gets the student next year we can swap it to their enrollment. That's no problem. My team can do that for you, because my passion is these students get the right support from day one. But what I know about my ADHD, PDA and ODD students is this: staff get burnt out. That staff actually, when I'm put into schools, it's normally when everything has fallen apart. Staff have tried everything. But if they had just understood this piece, the neurodiversity of PDA, ODD, or the ADHD, they would understand. And this is what happens. As soon as I explain it, they're like, this is why these strategies aren't working. So please think about who else needs to know this information, and please share with them. The other thing I just wanted to say, if you want to start your year with a whole school PD with me, in the past, in January, I would go out and just do a PD for a school. And then I'd get requests from all these other schools wanting the same date. And I just felt that was really unfair, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, where you have set days. Like I am going to schools in South Australia and Victoria because you have more flexibility. You can choose your own dates. In Western Australia, like I go to your schools throughout the year, doesn't impact on everyone else. I can find a date for you because you have flexibility. But some states have set dates, and I think ACT, you might be like that too. So what I've done, I've got a range of dates. I've looked at every state's professional learning or PD days, and I've gone, okay, Queensland's got one on this date. I will do a PD day on the Friday before the January long weekend. Sorry, the dates just slipped my mind, but that will be live virtual. So you can join me from anywhere, for example. And then after the long weekend is New South Wales ACT and I think Victoria's PD days. So some of you've got that day. So you can join me from anywhere. Now, last year we had schools of up to 60 people joining me on Zoom. It was absolutely fantastic. The feedback was amazing. Everyone loved it. Some schools chose to sit in one room with a big screen, and we did a big tech check before and made sure it all worked. Some schools chose to work in small teams, like to sit in their teams. Some schools just chose for the teacher assistants to do it. One school had 23 teacher assistants, and I'll send you out show bags and lollies and sensory tools and everything for the day. So please enroll before the end of the year so I can get those show bags to you before schools close. But I mean, I can always send them out after. And some schools got me to send it to people's personal addresses. It doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure you know about those upcoming days. And New South Wales, everything changed at the end of last year, and there ended up being a day in February. A whole lot of schools were requesting this date in February. And again, I just feel like it's too exclusive to do one school, and particularly regional schools, you often don't have the budget, or I can't get a plane to see you. So this way it's open to everybody. So please have a look at those dates on my website. Email me. If you've got a big group, we can do a group discount. My passion is just to get you the information so you're armed with the tools of understanding to start the year and support neurodiverse students.